The man sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel as if it were the last thing holding him together. The rain tapped on the windshield, steady and unbothered by the storm raging inside him. He had just lost his job, another layoff, another rejection, another blow that seemed unfair. And as the minutes ticked by, his mind filled with complaints. Why me? Why always me? Why is the world so cruel? He muttered the words under his breath, letting them soak into the silence. But here's the paradox. Each complaint he whispered made him weaker. Each sentence was like water leaking from a cracked vessel. With every complaint, his strength drained, his energy faded, and his clarity dimmed. He felt like a victim of life, powerless to change his situation. This is where Seneca's harsh truth cuts deep. 2,000 years ago, in the chaos of Rome, Seneca wrote, "What is the point of complaining? It does not lessen your burden, it only makes you weaker." He knew something most men today forget. Complaints are a form of self-sabotage. They give your energy to the problem instead of the solution. But let's pause here. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you complained about something? Maybe the traffic, maybe your boss, maybe your partner, maybe even your own body. It felt justified, didn't it? You had every reason to voice your frustration. But here's the brutal truth Seneca would whisper in your ear. Every moment you complain, you are practicing weakness. That sounds offensive at first, almost insulting. But think about it. When you complain, what changes? The traffic doesn't move faster. Your boss doesn't suddenly transform into a fair man. The world doesn't shift. Only you shift. Downward. The man in the car didn't know it yet, but this was his turning point, because at that very moment, he remembered something his grandfather used to tell him. Don't cry about the fire, pick up the bucket. And that's the essence of Seneca's lesson. Stop complaining, start acting. If you've ever felt life was unfair, you're not alone. The question is, will you keep repeating that life is unfair, or will you stand and act in the one place you still have power? Seneca lived in a world that was anything but fair. He was exiled, accused, and eventually ordered to take his own life by the Emperor Nero. He knew injustice more than most, and yet his writings echo with one theme. Don't waste your breath in complaint. Spend it in action. Think of that. A man condemned by fate, stripped of everything, still refused to complain. Instead, he wrote letters of strength that we are reading 2,000 years later. Now let's return to the man in the car. He wipes the fog from the window, starts the engine, and decides, no, he doesn't know what's next, but he knows one thing. Complaining won't save him. Acting might. But here's where most men stumble. They think stopping complaints means suppressing emotions. It doesn't. Stoicism isn't about pretending nothing hurts. Seneca never denied pain. He never said suffering wasn't real. He said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Complaints feed that imagination. Action cuts through it. Imagine this, 2 soldiers in the same battle. One shouts to the heavens about the injustice of war, the cruelty of fate. The other grips his sword, breathes, and marches forward. Which one survives longer? Which one commands respect? Which one would you follow? Complaints kill your power. Action creates it. Every time you complain, you are training your mind to be powerless. Every time you act, no matter how small, you are training your mind to be strong. Which training do you want to repeat today? The man in the car drove home. He didn't have a job. He didn't have a plan, but he had a notebook. And that night, instead of writing complaints, he wrote actions. Call 3 old contacts. Call. Update resume. Wake up at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Tiny, simple actions, almost laughable. But Seneca's wisdom whispered in the margins. It is not because things are difficult that we do not act. It is because we do not act that they are difficult. That single shift from complaint to action was the seed of change. And here's something modern men forget. The brain doesn't distinguish much between small actions and big ones when it comes to momentum. Action is energy. Complaint is entropy. One step forward gives you a spark. One complaint drags you deeper into the dark. Seneca's harsh truth is brutal because it demands responsibility. No excuses, no whining, no waiting for the world to fix itself. The choice is always the same: complain and lose power, or act and create it. The question is not whether life is unfair. The question is, what will you do when it is? That's where your power begins, or ends. As the rain finally stopped outside his window, the man realized something that Seneca knew long ago. Life doesn't owe you fairness, but you owe yourself action. And that's where his story, your story, truly begins. He didn't know it yet, but the small list he scribbled on paper that night would become a lifeline, not because those actions solved everything instantly, but because they shifted his posture toward life itself. Instead of asking why the storm came, he began asking how to walk through it. Seneca himself knew storms. Before he became the tutor of Nero, before he stood at the heart of Rome's political power, he was exiled to a barren island off the coast of Corsica. His enemies had accused him of an affair with the emperor's sister, and in a world where accusation often meant guilt, exile was mercy compared to death. There, far from the Senate, far from wealth, far from everything he thought he was building, he could have drowned himself in endless complaints. He had every reason to curse his fate, to wallow in injustice, but instead he wrote. He used exile to sharpen his thoughts, to train his mind, to remind himself that complaining was nothing more than wasting the only currency man truly owns: time. He once wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there will be no end of them." Do you see it? Complaints are not only weakness, they are theft. Every sigh of self-pity steals from the very hours you will later beg to have back. The man in the car, now at his desk, would discover this in his own way. The first phone call he made was awkward. His contact barely remembered him. The resume he sent felt unimpressive, outdated. But each action, however clumsy, was a refusal to complain. And slowly, that refusal gave him momentum. In Rome, momentum was everything. The Stoics called it prohairesis, the guiding will, the inner command center of the soul. No emperor, no exile, no injustice could rob a man of that. Unless, of course, he gave it away willingly through constant complaint. Picture two men exiled on the same island. One curses the waves, spits at the sky, and wastes away in bitterness. The other picks up a pen, carves words into parchment, and leaves behind wisdom that will outlive empires. Both were broken by the same fate, but only one turned misfortune into a forge. What separates them? Not talent, not opportunity. Only this. One complained, the other acted. The modern man at his desk didn't know Seneca's words by heart, but he lived them in spirit. He began to sense that his complaints were a luxury he could no longer afford. Complaining made him feel righteous, but it left him powerless. Acting felt humbling, but it built something invisible inside him: strength. It is always this way. Complaining feels good in the moment, like scratching an itch, but afterward, the wound only grows. Action feels hard in the moment, but afterward, the wound begins to heal. Seneca's Rome was not gentle. Betrayal, corruption, sudden executions. Power was a wheel that crushed without warning. And yet he reminded himself daily that complaints did nothing but chain him to what he hated. Action, even small action, was the only path to freedom. The man today is not so different. His world is not filled with daggers and emperors, but with layoffs, bills, and silent nights that echo with doubt. Yet the truth remains the same across centuries. Complaints kill, actions create. Weeks later, he landed an interview. Not a dream job, not even the perfect fit, but he prepared anyway. Instead of muttering about the unfairness of the market, he spent his evenings rehearsing answers, studying the company, and ironing his one good suit. He walked into the room nervous but not powerless, and when he spoke, there was something in his tone, firmness born not of circumstances but of practice. The interviewer sensed it. People always do. A man who complains radiates bitterness. A man who acts, even quietly, radiates presence. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Replace craving with complaining, and the lesson becomes modern. It is not the man who suffers hardship who is weak, but the man who resents it. The man left the interview unsure of the outcome, but he was already stronger, and that strength did not come from results. It came from the refusal to complain. The same lesson echoes in another Stoic figure, Epictetus. He was born a slave, beaten so severely by his master that his leg remained crippled for life. If anyone had reason to drown in complaints, it was him. Yet Epictetus turned pain into philosophy. He taught students that while his body could be chained, his will remained free. Imagine that. A slave with a broken leg standing taller in spirit than emperors because he understood the simple truth. Complain and you serve twice, once to fate and once to your own despair. Act, even in chains, and you remain free. The man who had lost his job was not in chains. He was not in exile. He was not condemned to death. His struggles were real, yes, but lighter than those faced by the Stoics he now unknowingly imitated. And if they could choose action over complaint, what excuse did he have? In the weeks that followed, the man began to notice something subtle but undeniable. Everywhere he looked, people were drowning in complaints. At the cafe where he worked on his resume, two men at the next table spent an hour cursing politics. At the gym, one man muttered about his bad genetics while another scrolled his phone instead of lifting. On the subway, a woman loudly blamed the universe for her endless bad luck. It was everywhere, a chorus of voices rehearsing powerlessness. And he realized something unsettling. For years, he had been part of that chorus. He had wasted more hours complaining about his boss than he had spent learning a new skill. He had blamed the economy instead of improving his craft. He had cursed traffic instead of leaving 10 minutes earlier. And suddenly, Seneca's words rang louder than ever. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Complaints are nothing but imagination turned poisonous. They inflate the size of the wound, paint the world darker than it is, and in the process, paralyze the complainer. He wondered what would happen if, just for a single day, he refused to complain at all. No sighs at the weather, no muttering about traffic, no blaming the system. Just silence in the face of irritation and action in the face of obstacles. The first attempt was harder than he expected. When the train was late, his instinct was to grumble. When an email bounced back, his chest burned with irritation, but each time he caught himself. He asked, "Does this complaint change anything, or does it just poison me?" And then he acted. He walked instead of waiting. He rewrote the email instead of sulking, and something strange happened. The day did not get easier, but he felt lighter. The world hadn't changed, but he had. Think of how often modern men lose themselves in complaint. They complain about women, about money, about governments, about bosses, about luck. They gather in online forums and repeat their grievances until their voices blend into one endless hymn of resentment. Hours turn into days, days into years, and nothing changes. The men grow weaker, not because the world is cruel, but because they surrendered their strength willingly. Seneca would call it a form of suicide, not of the body, but of the soul. A slow death of potential drowned in bitterness. He warned that life is short, not because the years are few, but because we waste them. And what greater waste is there than filling them with complaint? The man, now a few weeks into his new practice, felt the shift growing deeper. Complaints no longer slipped out so easily. Action, once awkward, now felt natural, and his confidence, quiet, steady, began to return. Not the arrogant confidence of someone who thinks life will always favor him, but the grounded strength of a man who knows he can meet life on its terms. And this is what most people miss. Refusing to complain is not just about enduring hardship. It is about transforming hardship into a forge. Complaints chain you to the problem. Action forges you into someone larger than the problem. One night, he sat at the same desk where he once scribbled desperate notes. This time, he opened Seneca's writings, a passage he had found online. The wise man looks at life as a soldier looks at war. He does not complain of his wounds. He learns how to bear them and how to fight again. It struck him deeply. A soldier does not stand in the mud shouting at the sky. He grips his sword. He acts. That night he understood the harsh truth. Every complaint is wasted breath, and every action, no matter how small, is a step toward freedom. Months passed, and life began to shift in ways the man could not have predicted. He didn't rise to sudden riches. He didn't stumble into a perfect life, but he built momentum, and momentum is everything. He found steady work, not glamorous, not easy, but honest. He built a routine of discipline, one small action at a time. And slowly, the fog of despair lifted. What surprised him most wasn't the job, or the paycheck, or even the growing sense of stability. It was the quiet inside his own mind. For the first time in years, the constant background noise of complaints had gone silent. He discovered how much space and energy he had wasted on words that led nowhere. Without them, he was lighter, freer, sharper. This is exactly what Seneca meant when he wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Complaints rob you of that chance. They smother the fire before it can burn. But action lets you stand in the fire and emerge tempered. To understand this fully, we must return to Seneca's final day. Nero, his former student, had grown into a paranoid tyrant. Whispers of betrayal reached his ears, and Seneca was accused of conspiracy. The punishment was death. But in Rome, men of stature were often granted a grim courtesy, the right to take their own lives rather than face execution. When the order came, Seneca did not collapse into tears. He did not curse Nero or fate or the gods. He gathered his family and friends, and with a calm voice, he consoled them, reminding them that death was only part of nature's law. Then he slit his veins slowly and deliberately, speaking philosophy until the very end as his life ebbed away. Imagine that, a man condemned by his own pupil, facing a death he did not deserve, yet still refusing to waste a single breath on complaint. Even in his final act, he chose action over despair. His life ended, but his example lived on. The man at his desk read this story with a kind of awe. He realized that Seneca had faced a fate far harsher than a lost job, harsher than most modern struggles, and yet met it with a strength beyond understanding. Not strength of circumstance, but strength of principle. He thought back to his old self, the one in the car, muttering into the rain, drowning in bitterness. He could see now how small that man had been, how fragile, how enslaved by his own words. And he felt a quiet pride that he had taken even a few steps away from that weakness. It wasn't about becoming perfect. It wasn't about never feeling frustration again. It was about remembering, in every moment, that a complaint was a choice, and so was an action. One led downward, the other upward. When he faced difficulty now, and there were many, he asked himself one simple question: what would Seneca do? The answer was never to complain. The answer was always to act. That single question became his compass, guiding him through uncertainty, reminding him that the harsh truth is also the liberating truth. Complaints kill your power, but action builds it, breath by breath, step by step, choice by choice. And in that realization, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: unshakable. Not because life had become easy, but because he finally understood what it meant to carry his burden with strength. One evening, long after the storm of his layoff had passed, the man found himself walking along the river. The city lights shimmered across the water, broken and scattered yet beautiful. He thought of his journey, the bitter, rain-soaked night in the car, the endless complaints that once chained him, the small actions that had carried him here. And he thought of Seneca, the philosopher who faced exile, betrayal, and finally death itself, without a single wasted word of complaint. He realized that the harsh truth was not cruel, after all. It was a gift. Complaints had stolen years from him, but action had given him back his strength. He stood on the bridge, watching the current flow beneath. A river never complains. It never stops to argue with the stones in its path. It moves relentlessly, reshaping the land not with noise, but with steady persistence. That, he thought, is what a man must be. Not a voice lost in the chorus of grievance, but a river, silent, strong, unstoppable. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of his own silence, not the silence of resignation, but the silence of resolve. And in that silence, he understood the final lesson Seneca left behind. The world will always give you reasons to complain, but you always hold the power to act. One path drains you, the other transforms you. So the question is not whether life is fair or whether fate is kind. The question, the only question, is this: will you waste your breath, or will you build your strength? The man turned from the river and walked on, his steps quiet but firm, carrying within him the same truth carried by the Stoics before him: complaints kill, action creates. And with that, he disappeared into the night, not lighter because life was easy, but stronger because he chose to carry it well. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a brother, a friend, or anyone who needs to be reminded of what real strength looks like. Subscribe for more lessons on Stoic power and presence, because this path isn't walked alone. The more of us who live with clarity and discipline, the stronger we all become.